Greetings everyone. So this video is going to be a bit different because I'm not talking about fiction at all. I thought that I might talk about the most horrific real life experience I've ever had, and I'm not really sure why I feel compelled to do this, but I do. I've been thinking about it for quite a long time, and the older I've got, the more careful I've become about how much of my personal information I share online. And typically speaking, I mention people and things about my life, but I don't really like to go into a lot. But I think that I'm hoping that maybe this might be comforting to some people, maybe if anyone's been through anything similar. I felt very alone when I was going through all of this stuff, and also I am going to get on to why the horror community means so much to me towards the end of what I'm going to talk about, because the horror folk played a direct role in how I recovered from all of this stuff. So before I go into it, I'm going to be talking about injuries that I got from a fairly serious accident, and also I'm going to be talking a little bit about PTSD and also painkillers and things like that. So if any of this kind of stuff sounds like traumatic or triggering to you in any way, I maybe don't watch this, I don't know, but I just wanted to let you know ahead of time that that's what's coming up. And the last thing before I go into anything is I want everyone to know that I am fine. So some of this is going to sound a little bit heavy, and I just really don't want anybody to feel bummed out by any of this or worried about me in any way. So that said, let's go into it. I kind of want to share. Do you remember when I couldn't stop bringing up Alien Covenant and it just kept finding its way into my stuff? This experience finds its way into conversations I'm still having now, even though this whole ordeal was almost 15 years ago. And I feel like if I just talk about it all in one big video now, then maybe I can maybe I could just put it in the same drawer that I put Alien Covenant in, and I'll just stop bringing it up all the time. So in 2010, I was in a car accident. I was not driving, but it wasn't the fault of the person that was driving the car I was in. I was sat in the back, and long story short, there were a number of people in the other car. There were 3 people in the car I was in, and people did have whiplash and stuff like that, but I, for some reason, sustained really serious injuries. And nobody else did. So I feel like I got everyone else's share of stuff, and they were kind of like freak injuries because we weren't, going on massive speed. I mean, we'd actually stopped at traffic lights, and so we had just pulled off to cross a junction after being stopped. So we were going slow and the other car was going fast, but not 80 miles an hour fast. So it's just unfortunate, just one of those freaky unfortunate things. And I remember feeling, I'll skim over, I won't go into massive detail about this, but to paint a picture for you, I felt really winded initially from the seatbelt and everything, and then as we were sort of being pulled out of the car and stuff, or like encouraged out of the car, I realised that the people around me were kind of up and about and shocked but okay, but I was rapidly feeling significantly worse physically. I had really bad stomach pain, and also my back really hurt, and the policeman that got me out of the car had no patience for me. He just wanted me out of the car, sat me down on the pavement, and then my vision just completely disappeared. All I could see was just white, just nothing. I could hear everything. I'm not sure how focused I was on what I could hear, I can't really remember, but I do remember that I just had no vision at all, and it was very weird, and I guess that was shock. And I remember hearing paramedics, when they were called, making their way around asking everyone if they were okay, and my friend, who was like, yeah, we're fine, just can you look at my friend? So they were talking to me but I couldn't see them, and they asked me to get up, and I realised that I couldn't, and I was made to feel like I was being a drama queen. They tutted the person I was talking. I never knew what this person looked like because, again, complete whiteout, but they tutted and they were like, are you really going to make us put you on a stretcher? And I think that they did, and then put me in an ambulance, and then that was when the real abdominal pain started. And to cut a long story short, crazy, I spent about 5 hours in A&E before anybody properly checked me over, like as in like took me for a scan, and I had a number of life-threatening injuries that I'd just been dealing with, and the point that I remember being taken seriously, because I remember overhearing a nurse saying to my friend, "Oh, she's a bit of a drama queen, isn't she?" They made me walk around when I said my back felt stiff, because they told me I needed to walk it off, and that there was nothing, you know, visibly wrong with me. So they didn't think there was anything wrong with me. And at the point that they took me seriously, they'd reluctantly put me on a morphine drip because I was complaining about quite severe pain, and then they asked me what my pain level was now, and I said it was worse, and then they were concerned because I was on a morphine drip, so I shouldn't have really been feeling any pain if it was just aches and pains. So yeah, so then I was rushed into surgery, and the list of injuries I had go as follows. My back was broken. And I'm laughing because can you imagine being the nurse that called me a drama queen, finding that out later on? She must have felt so bad. But yeah, my back was broken, my spleen had ruptured, a big part of my bowel had ruptured, my appendix ruptured, I had damage to my stomach lining, and I think that they said surface damage on my liver that would heal on its own, and some other little things, but those are the major ones. So I had a surgery, several abdominal surgeries all in one go, and they had to do surgery for my back a few days later after the abdominal stuff, because they couldn't, like, obviously roll me straight over after doing all of that to operate on my back. So those were my injuries, and I spent a week in intensive care, which is a blur because I was obviously on many drips and medications and stuff, so that's kind of all melded into one big day for me. And then I had the spinal surgery at some point, and then about 7 or 8 days into A&E, I think they took me to the ward at that point, and they weren't really sure what ward to put me on because there are lots of different wards for certain types of injury groups, and because I had a lot of stuff done, I ended up on the bowel ward because that was the most made the most sense, I guess, and they had room there. So it was quite a time, and it was really scary on the night, because anyone who's gone through anything similar to any degree will know that it's really terrifying when you know that there is something seriously wrong with you and the people who are supposed to be helping you don't believe you. And I think that was the thing that I struggled with more than anything else while I was recovering, was like that feeling that I'd never really like begged for help before, and then I was in a hospital begging people to listen to me and no one was listening to me. And I've learned lessons out of this. One of the things I have learned is to make sure I advocate myself as strongly as possible, to the point of making myself a nuisance if I need medical help now. I am not in the practice of letting people dismiss me, especially GPs, anymore, because there were some follow-up things that happened after this where I was being dismissed again, and it was insane. So yeah, after that, they did say that I was going to be in the hospital for a few months because I didn't have any paralysis or anything. I was really lucky, especially considering they made me walk off the stiffness in A&E on the night. But I did need to, because I'd been led down for so long, I had problems when I tried to sit and stand, because my blood pressure would go nuts and I'd faint. So I had to practice standing up for days, and then before I was allowed to walk, and I was obviously very weak. In that 2-week stint in hospital, I went from about 10.5 stone to just under 7. I was 6 stone 12 or something when I came out of hospital. So your body does burn a lot of calories when it's like healing, and probably quite a few of those pounds are probably organs. So yeah, I did not want to be in the hospital for months, because I was supposed to be starting my second year of university about 3 weeks later, and I just, because this happened in like the summer break, and I just wanted to go back to uni as normal and have essays and projects and stuff to work on, so I would have a focus, because I was very frazzled and really struggling with my injuries and things, and I didn't want to go home and then have nothing to work on, because I was afraid I would just stagnate in I didn't know I had PTSD at the time, but I had PTSD, and I was just afraid that I was going to go home and just feel sorry for myself and not make any real progress about recovering. And I just thought it would be better, because I really loved university, and I was one of those weirdos that really loved doing research and writing essays and things, so I just wanted to have like stuff to focus on and goals to work towards and things. So I started getting up. The physiotherapist was supposed to help me get out of bed and practice walking around and stuff, but they were so stretched at the time, they never had time, so I think I only saw them once or twice. So I just started waiting for my one friend to turn up, and then he would help me, and I got told off for that, but I thought, well, I'm not staying here for months because of staff shortages when I could get up. So I just had a checklist of things I had to be able to do before I could go home. One of the things, this is one of the things I don't like talking about very much, but yeah, in the name of like covering the whole experience. So because a large section of my bowel was damaged in this whole thing, I had to have quite a bit of it removed, which meant that for a temporary period of time I had to have a colostomy bag, because obviously things can't just carry on as normal when you've had something like that done. And before, this was one of the more shocking things to me when I was on the ward, because when I was in intensive care they did explain all of this to me, but I have no recollection of it because I was on a lot of morphine and I was sedated and all this, so like they would have explained this to me, but it all left my head. So I had to have my injuries repeated to me when I got down to the ward, and I was a bit more lucid, and they stopped sedating me, and I was still on a morphine drip then, but yes, I was a lot more with it and like present and everything. I knew what was going on. And then the first day that I saw the colostomy bag was the day that I realised I had a colostomy, because again I'd forgotten, and I had never heard of a colostomy bag. I had no idea what a stoma was. I didn't know that this was a thing that existed. So when the stoma nurse came in to teach me how to change the bag, I had to have it explained to me again by a very startled stoma nurse that didn't realise she was going to have to explain this to me, what I'd had done. And then I was expected to learn how to change the bag, and in that moment I had a meltdown, because I got over this afterwards, but it's quite shocking to go from not knowing that this is a procedure that exists to being told that apart so if you're squeamish you might want to skip ahead. So for people who don't know, a stoma, or a colostomy site, they pull a little bit of your intestine out for the outside of your body to get rid of your waste, because you can't go to the bathroom as normal in this sort of scenario, and then they fit you with a bag over the top, and then that's where the waste goes, and then you just like change it every morning or whatever, or as needed, and it's really hygienic. And for anyone who has misconceptions, like, it doesn't smell, it's really clean, and all of that stuff. It's just that it's in the moment when you're first learning this, and you're learning it because you had this done, it is absolutely horrifying. At the time I was I was in uni on a drama course, this really physical course, and also I was a burlesque entertainer, and I had finally made it to the point I got booked for a bunch of stuff over the summer, and I'd worked so hard to get to that point of like actually getting bookings by myself outside of my group, and then that all went out the window. So I was dealing with a whole bunch of stuff. Long story short, I had to figure all of this stuff out so that I could leave and go home to my flat where I lived, so I could go back to uni. And I did manage to get there, and I did manage to re-enroll and everything. It's just, but the first week that I went back, I had to go and speak to all of my lecturers about what had happened, because I needed some help, obviously, because I was not very physically capable. I couldn't walk very far because my back would start really hurting, or my, like, I still had, you know, very sore abdomen from all the surgery and everything. So I just had a lot of, I was like, technically I was temporarily disabled with all of this stuff, and I wasn't very capable of much, but I was trying really hard to get well, get strong, eat and all of that so I could just carry on with my life as normal, or redirect my efforts because I'd been knocked out of all of the physical stuff that I enjoyed doing at the time. So what followed after that was left the hospital, and then I was supposed to have the colostomy bag for about a year, but my surgeon called me about 6 months later because they had a surgical cancellation and they could get me in early. So I went in for to have the colostomy reversed, and so they just sort of, you know, poke it back in there. And by the time they poked it in, I kind of missed it. I named it Wiggles because when you take the bag off and you can see it, if you think about food or drink or anything, it's funny how much you learn about your interior when it's exterior. But yeah, if I even thought about food while I could see it, it would like wiggle around, so I called it Wiggles. So yeah, poked Wiggles back on in there, everything seemed fine. Then about a month later, I got rushed back into hospital for an unexpected emergency surgery because of complications, because I had adhesions, which is like scar tissue problems from the first wave of surgery that didn't present itself as an issue until all my bowel was back in use, and I had a blockage because of scar tissue and stuff. Now, this was the second time I got dismissed by medical professionals, because for the entire time from leaving hospital to getting rushed back in, I had been going to the GP complaining that I had a really intense pain in my tummy area, and I just kept getting sent home and told, oh, it's normal that you'd be paranoid about all the pain, considering everything that you've had done. And either that, so paranoid apparently, or I was told that it was normal amount of pain, but well, actually what I was feeling was tissue internally that was like doing this, because like regular tissue all goes one way, so it's stretchable, and scar tissue is all crisscrossed and like things, so it's hard, you know, it causes you issues. So that was a whole other butterfly surgery again, and I had just recovered from all of this stuff and I was starting to feel better, so it felt like slingshotting backwards in my recovery, and I had a bit of a meltdown. Luckily they were able to just fix things. I didn't have to have anything major done again or whatever. But it was meltdown time for me because I had worked so hard to stay in uni. My lecturers were really supportive. Student services were not. They kept trying to tell me that I needed to defer a year, which in hindsight was really discriminatory, that they wouldn't make any adjustments for me because my lecturers were all willing to make adjustments, but they kept telling me that they couldn't do that because it would be I'd have an unfair advantage over the other students. And if I'd had the wherewithal at the time, I would have complained that this was discrimination and I would have fought harder for myself. But long story short, because I missed an assessment when I got rushed back into hospital, they held me back a year, so they didn't kick me out. I was allowed to finish the courses that I was doing well at that year, but I had to do a second year for the sake of 40 credits, which really pissed me off, but it worked out in the long term. Okay, so that was all okay. And then a few months after that, the way that they fixed my back in the first instance was they put metal rods in there to like keep it straight, and then they told me that it was optional, but I could have them taken out, and if I didn't, they might cause me a lot of pain a bit later on, so I opted to have them taken out. And then that was all my surgeries. So recovery. So this was all very scary as I was going through it, because I was feeling a lot of things in my body that, you know, a lot of pain and stuff. You suddenly become very aware of every area of your body when you've been butterflied. So sorry for the language, but that's the easiest way to explain it to you. I had a friend who was a really great friend to me at the time who had similar surgeries, and I found that anytime I coughed or laughed or anything, you don't realise how much of your core you engage when you do that until it's in pain and you feel everything. And he advised me that just sneezing wasn't worth it. If I needed to sneeze, just do anything else, because it would just be the worst thing, and it was. So yeah, I did have really supportive people around me that were helping me and stuff, but it still felt lonely because apart from that one person, like, no one had gone through anything like this, and it makes you feel really isolated, because my first thing every time people came in to visit me, I just wanted to look like mentally I was okay, because I didn't want people to have to worry about me when they left and stuff. So I was really trying to put on like a brave face. And the other thing was, I just kept getting told all the time how lucky I was, and I was lucky to be alive. But that's one way of looking at it. The other way of looking at it is I felt very hard done by, because everybody else was okay, everyone else involved was okay, and then I was going through all of this stuff, and it felt really unfair. And there was even a bit of me, for a weird patch of time, I thought that I somehow had it coming with karma or something. Like, I felt like I must have like deserved it for this to have happened to me specifically. But it's just, you know, one of those freak things and stuff. So the physical recovery was really hard, and it was really hard obviously because I'd lost so much weight, and you're going through pain and stuff, but then you're very weak as well. And I was getting frustrated with myself a lot, like waking up just feeling unwell all the time, and then everything hurts when you're trying to get out of bed. Like, getting up in the morning was the worst because you'd be all stiff and stuff, and I was very unkind to myself, probably because I was just like resenting that my body just wouldn't work the way I was used to it working. And it was just really hard to adjust to, oh, this is going to be a process to like get back to normal. And my normal now is different from my normal before then, by the way, but I'm happy now. I feel like I've done really well, all things considered. So I decided that the thing that would help me get better quicker was if I was eating better, because I was on morphine for 2 weeks in the hospital, and then they prescribed the maximum dose of tramadol for when I came out. And so all I knew, and this is going to make me sound like such a dipshit, by the way, so I'd never been addicted to anything before, so I didn't know how addiction worked. It didn't even occur to me that this was going to be an issue. So I realized, oh, my appetite is completely dead, and I feel sick all the time because of the tramadol, because that's a side effect. So I just one day stopped taking the tramadol, and at this point I had 2 weeks I was on a morphine drip just continuously in the hospital. But this is when I first came out of hospital now, before I got rushed back in for the second surgeries. So I came out of hospital after 2 weeks on morphine, and then I was on tramadol for about, I reckon about 8 weeks or so before I decided, oh, I think I really need to come off this. I decided that I would rather just deal with the pain of all the post-surgery stuff and my back and everything, but I could deal with that as long as I knew I wasn't in danger. I'm okay with pain as long as I know it's not an indication of danger, and that I would just deal with that, and then I'd rather like build my strength and be able to eat and everything. 2 days later, I collapse, get rushed to the GP, they're doing all these tests, they don't know what's happened, da, 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 da. And then at some point he goes, oh, you didn't just stop taking your tramadol, did you? And I was like, well, yeah, I did actually. And then he was like, oh, well, you can't do that. You've got to taper off that. It's really dangerous. It's an opiate. And I was like, well, this is information that could have been explained to me at any point. How can you give me a prescription for something and not tell me something like that? So he told me off, and then I was like, well, what do I need to do? And so he explained that it's really dangerous to come off a drug like that, especially after being on it for so long and the dose I was on and everything. And the only thing that had been said to me in the hospital is, when they were taking me off the morphine drip, was, oh, you might have some trouble coming off this. And I thought that they meant because of my pain levels, because I would be feeling a lot more pain when I was coming off the painkillers. Didn't even occur to me. And that experience of coming off those kinds of drugs really gave me a sympathy and an understanding for other kinds of addicts that I never had. Not that I would like to think I was never unsympathetic to people with problems with drugs and stuff, but I had no understanding at all of, I thought that addiction was all like a mental thing, I think, until this. And then I realized like there is a mental component to it with the dependence and stuff, but it is a very, very physical problem. Like, your body reacts and it does things. And so that was really hard, and that was the worst part of the whole experience for me, was coming off opiates, because you can taper and taper, but once you hit the point where your body starts really withdrawing from it, that's when the real hell begins. And it is, yeah, I really have like sympathy for people who struggle with addiction, because it's, even when you come off it, your brain will forever try to convince you that it's a good idea. So like, even to this day, I'm very conscious of this. I don't take anything. I do have access to these things in case, because I have back problems still, and I always will, but I tend to just put up with daily back pain rather than take the painkillers, because I know that if I decided after a few days I can't be bothered to deal with this much pain, I'll take the painkillers. I know I'll just ricochet back into being on them for too long, and then I'll have to do the withdrawal process again. And the withdrawal process was the worst thing about the entire thing. Like, worse than the surgery pain, worse than the shock and everything of the night. It's really hardcore, or it was for me. So that was a whole part of the process. And then the other thing is that people are really unkind. So that was another part that was bad. So I was plowing on and trying to go into uni as much as I could, and there was a bus stop right by my house, so I would sort of hobble onto the bus and stuff and sit down, and the looks that I would get from people, because I was very pale, I looked ill, and I was really skinny, and I had junky comments made to me by people in older generations, not people my own age, like looked at me, because I guess there was something to look at, but it was older people that were vocal and made me feel like a piece of shit, and that was really bad. That was what taught me that a lot of people are absolute assholes, and also that was the turning point for me not really caring what people thought about me anymore. Because, and also a turning point that took me to, I would like to think that I'm a lot less judgmental these days, just in general, because you don't know what other people are going through, and there's no need to look at somebody and just make an unkind judgment in the first place, really. So that was a whole thing. So when I got rushed back in for this second set of surgeries after I had the colostomy reversed, so I went in, I told them when I went to get the colostomy reversed that I didn't want to be on morphine, because I had just, like, a few weeks ago completely come off tramadol, and I just finally started to feel like not withdrawally anymore. And they were like, well, you can't really go through a major surgery and not have morphine. And I was like, look, I do not consent to it. So if it's okay, I would like to wake up from the surgery, and then if I ask you for the morphine, can you give it to me? But otherwise, I don't want to wake up on it. So they did comply with that, and I immediately asked for the morphine. I woke up and I was like, oh, I think I'm okay. And then I guess as the anaesthetics wore off more, I was like, oh no. So I asked for it, but I just had that one dose. I think I was on a drip for a couple of hours, and then they took me off it, and then I was okay. But when I got rushed back in for this other major surgery, for the adhesions, I was in hospital for 2 weeks again on a morphine drip for the whole time. So I had to go through that whole withdrawal process again. So that is a horror of monumental proportions, and yeah, I've got to be careful now. I can't just take a Migraleave tablet, for example, because there's codeine in it. So this is just how it's affected me going on, and I wanted to talk about that side of things because I think that there's so much shame around addiction, even in a situation where it was absolutely necessary for me to be on these drugs, because you can't go through that much surgery without that kind of pain relief. It's too shocking to the system. And I have been made to feel bad about myself for this, and no more. And I just hope that if anyone is listening to or watching this that has been through anything similar, or they're struggling with anything like this, it's not weak of you if it takes you a few goes to come off a thing, because it's very physical, it's very stressful, it's really unpleasant. And if you're somebody that's managed to kick something like this and then you've ended up back on it and you've tried again, like, you're not weak because it's taken you several attempts. You're a badass, because even though you know how horrible withdrawal is, you're going back in for another go at it. So like, just be nice to yourselves if you're in this kind of situation. So those are all my surgeries and weird stuff and uni and everything, and I tried to make some bullet points so I wouldn't waffle forever about this. So let's have a look here. Immune treatment. Now, needless to say, I struggled to get jobs after this, and funny that, because I'd never struggled to... every job I'd ever applied for, I got the interview and then I got the job. And then all of a sudden, because I had to declare the back surgery in case I needed time off for back related things later on, all of a sudden I don't get interviews anymore, and that is a problem that continues 15 years later, and it's really annoying because officially, legally, like, people can't discriminate against you for issues like that. But let's be real, nothing else about me has changed except for I now have a first class BA and a master's degree, and I find it harder to find jobs now than I did before this happened. I do have people that I work for and I'm very grateful. But yeah, so that's been a challenge that feels unfair because I worked so hard to put myself back in a better position. I refocused my academics a little bit. I stopped dancing and things like that, and tried to go more into sit down creative things, writing and things like that. But yeah, it's been hard with the job market, and this is where the horror community comes in, because before all this happened, I think people thought I was an extrovert because of the burlesque stuff and whatever, and I think because of the performance things, people thought I wasn't as shy as I was, but I was really shy and really introverted and like not much self-confidence and stuff. And I'm sure you can imagine that being a 20-something-year-old now with quite a lot of scarring on my body and things, and like a bad back, it doesn't make you feel very good about yourself when you like, oh, I can't really go out drinking with my friends now because my back is going to start hurting an hour into the night and I'm going to have to go home and things like that. Also, I have no alcohol tolerance since my spleen came out, so I don't know if that's spleen related, but that is just a fact. I cannot drink at all. And I was feeling a bit like, I've always felt a little bit like I don't fit in, a bit like an alien, and I was feeling even more that way. Like, I just felt like, as well-meaning as everyone is, and as supportive as everyone was, like I said, it's quite an isolating experience to go through a whole bunch of stuff like that where people want to help but they can't really understand. And so I was kind of in that bubble, and then I discovered the indie horror community and it turned my life around, because there were a number of things that turned my life around. Getting a really fun job a bit later, like a friend was an entertainment manager at a holiday park, and he gave me a job there and gave me a shot and really helped bring me back out of my shell, so that was a really big thing. But when I started getting published in the indie horror sphere, and then I met people, started writing for Ginger Nuts of Horror, and I made a lot of friends online, and the reaction, I was still talking about all of this stuff quite a lot at the time because I was trying to work through like the trauma of it, I guess, and I kept just bringing it up in conversation and making everyone uncomfortable. But there was the people in the horror community that just like weren't spooked by this. So like I'd get, oh, cool scars, oh, that's really like, that's crazy, like, and then people would ask me questions and it would give me the opportunity to talk about it, and it just felt like the horror group was so not put off by me for this experience, and I felt really accepted. And I don't know, the horror group is the least judgmental group of people in the world, the kind of people where you can say things like, oh, I have an opiate problem, and nobody side-eyes you. They're like, oh, that's terrible, do you want to, oh, what happened? And it's I just found like second family in these people that I'd never met, that I was just talking to online. And I wrote an article about this, what I've just told you, but condensed. I've probably been talking forever by now. And that was published on Ginger Nuts of Horror, and I had so many supportive, lovely messages, a lot of them from people who'd had surgical experiences, accidents, things like that, and it just really made me feel like a normal person again for the first time in years. And so this is partially why I am so attached to all of my horror friends, a lot of people I haven't met in real life, that I consider friends, and then people that are on the indie horror circuit in the UK that I've met, I consider family. I don't know what they think of me, but I'm always really excited to see everybody, and I just never feel like a weirdo with these people, even when we're talking about things like this. It's just such a different tone. To maybe the horror crowd just scares less easily and they're more curious about weird, crazy surgical shit. But what a great group. So lessons that the whole ordeal has taught me. 15 years on now, I still have chronic back pain. I always will, but I can manage that. I'm grateful that that's all I have as a result of breaking my back. I have a weakened immune system because I don't have a spleen, but again, could have been worse. I'm very grateful now that I've had time to recover from everything, that I'm basically fine now. Like, I have my ongoing problems, but I consider myself as good as I can be. But things that whole ordeal taught me was you only get one life. This is going to sound a little bit preachy, but this is, I think I have kind of a sunny mindset towards all of my hopes and dreams, and it's because that was one of the first things I thought about when I woke up in hospital, was like, oh my god, I haven't published a story yet, I've never released a novel, blah blah blah. Like, I had a whole bunch of stuff, and it was after that that I started really trying. And I gotta say, like, a decade plus on, I haven't made massive amounts of money from my writing, but I am now starting to. The last year I have started selling stories at pro rates for really reputable publications. I can't talk about them apart from the Flame Tree Press one. They've finally announced that I'm in an anthology called This Way Lies Madness that'll be coming out in the autumn, and I'm really excited about that because Ramsey Campbell is also in there, and it's been a bucket list dream of mine to be in an anthology with Ramsey Campbell, so I'm really excited about that. So this is why basically I spend all of my free time that I'm not working pursuing creative endeavors, because this is where I would really like to actually make a living. And I don't care if I never actually make a living from it, I will just never stop. But yeah, that was one of the things. I just thought, like, I'll just never give up on the stuff I want to do, because life is very precious and it can be cut short. So you may as well spend all of your time doing things that you love doing. And the other, probably more important lesson I learned is to try to be kind to people. We live in a world at the moment where people are very divided and people are savage towards each other. The things that people say, the things that people think. There are a lot of people with a lot of prejudices that are like rejoicing at the thought of making other people's lives harder just because they don't understand those people. And life is too short for all of that shit as well. So if you can, just be kind to people. It doesn't cost you anything to be kind, and it costs you less to be kind than it does to be angry, because that takes stuff out of you. So I don't know why I've gone on my soapbox. I just wanted to end this on a positive note. Like, that I went through something that's really horrific on multiple levels, but I wouldn't undo it if I could go back in time, because I feel like I'm a better person now for everything that experience taught me about myself and about the world. Advocate for yourself for medical things. Do not let people dismiss you. And read cool books. Hey, editing Kaylee here in front of my Walking Dead pops, because I thought that seemed appropriate. I forgot to say in the other video, because I was getting to the end and I started feeling really awkward about everything I'd said. I should say that the surgeons and the nurses on the ward were absolutely incredible. I was really lucky to have them. Sorry, my phone's facing me now and I can't figure out where to look, so it looks like I'm looking at you. So sorry about this. Yeah, they were amazing. I will forever be grateful to the people who saved my life and looked after me, even though I was having a very bad time. That does not take away from the level of care that I received through the NHS, which we need to save, because I don't know where I would be if I'd had to pay. I'd be paying that off for the rest of my life. If anyone has any questions about anything I said, you can't ask me anything too personal, so literally anything, please feel free to ask. If you're not comfortable asking in the comments, my email address is available in my information on like my tab on YouTube, or also through the website. The email address is there, and I'm happy to, like, if anyone's going through anything and you need an ear or just someone to talk to about anything, please, like, I'm here. if anyone wants to talk to me about anything. So that's that. Oh, and also, if anyone's gone through a thing where you were the victim of a thing and you're claiming compensation, you have my sympathy, because that is just several years of people calling you a liar on top of everything else you've already been through. So yeah, I completely forgot to talk about that. I'm not going to go on about it now. But again, if anyone has any questions, happy to answer. I'll take you back to present awkward fumbling Kaylee now. And I don't really know how to end this, and there's a good chance I might not actually put this up. Maybe I just needed to sit and waffle about it. But yeah, if you're here, that's a little bit about me and my background and the deepening love of horror that I have, and this did actually make me love horror even more. You'd think maybe it would have put me off the genre, but I just find that the stuff that happens in horror novels is just not as bad as my real life stuff from the past. So maybe that's another reason why I like it. I feel awkward now. Don't know. Bye.